Welcome to our Teen and Parent webinar series, where we explore one of the most important journeys families face together: understanding the teen brain, the risks of addiction, and the power of healthy communication. Adolescence is a time of rapid growth and change, physically, emotionally, and neurologically, and these changes can sometimes make it hard for parents and teens to connect. In this series, we'll break down the science of the developing brain, discuss how substance use impacts decision-making and long-term health, and provide practical tools for strengthening communication and building resilience at home. Today, we have Dr. Donald Reed from the McDowell County Hope Coalition and Mr. Cliff Adkins from Clear Story Counseling.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Donald Reed with the McDowell County Commission on Aging. Joining us today is Mr. Brock Jackson, also with the McDowell County Commission on Aging and the McDowell County Hope Coalition, and Mr. Cliff Adkins with Clear Story Counseling. Our topic today is anxious attachment, a relationship pattern that often begins in childhood that can affect us throughout our lives. Children who experience inconsistency, uncertainty, or fear of losing important relationships may grow up constantly worried or wondering if they're loved, valued, or enough. As teenagers and adults, these feelings can appear as fear of rejection, a need for reassurance, difficulty trusting relationships, or anxiety when others seem distant. Many people live in these struggles without realizing the reason behind them. Today, we're going to explore this anxious attachment, how it develops, and how it impacts our relationships, and what practical steps our grandparents and parents can take to help their children build healthier, more secure connections with others and themselves. Mr. Jackson, I'll turn it over to you.
All righty, we'll start with our first question. What is anxious attachment, and how does it first begin in childhood?
Anxious attachment usually begins when we're kids, and it's when a child learns that connection or emotional safety, warmth, is sometimes given and sometimes not. And that's life. That's all of us, will experience that. However, they start to attribute the reasons for that. Sometimes they get attention and connection, and sometimes they don't. They perceive that as there's something about themselves that they are the reason why they get it. They are the reason why they no longer get it. And so when a kid starts to experience that inconsistency in the way that they receive security or warmth or connection, they will then begin to develop anxious attachment where they're constantly nervous whether or not that warmth, that connection that they're getting from those they love will be pulled away at any moment. And so they live in this like constantly activated state to where they don't know when the and it just persists all the way through. It can just all the way through into adulthood.
What are some signs of anxious attachment in children that parents, teachers, and really caregivers should recognize?
I would say whenever the child overreacts, so to speak, really has a strong reaction to when the parent leaves or whoever takes care of them, or someone they love, when they have a very strong, intense reaction to when that person's no longer around them, or if they're constantly bringing up situations like, you're going to be back, right? You're not leaving me. They're using this like abandonment, rejection type language and talk. So
How does anxious attachment often change or show itself during the teenage years?
they will become very, very anxious, hyper aware of, they'll be very vigilant to watch everyone around them, their reaction. They would be more prone to read more into text messages. They would, every slight, anything that could be taken as rejection, their brains will naturally go towards, I'm being rejected, I'm being abandoned, this is where the relationship ends. This is where they're going to leave me. So they're going to be very clingy. They're going to be very worried they're going to start to overdo everything that they can to hang on to that relationship, to maintain that relationship, because they don't understand that life sometimes, like sometimes the other person's busy, sometimes they're in a bad mood, sometimes they don't feel like talking, sometimes that's just a change. How we all have different days, ups and downs, but someone with anxious attachment has a hard time accepting that or believing that fully. So they always see the reason as themselves, and so they'll overdo it. They'll send several texts in order. They'll keep checking on all the relationships to make sure that the relationship is in good standing, so to speak. And they'll just need a constant state of reassurance and be very sensitive to any changes whatsoever in the climate of their relationship.
Why do you think so many adults with anxious attachment struggle with feelings that they are not enough or that their love is never enough?
Yeah, so someone with an anxious attachment tends to over give. They will give so much over and over and over because, again, the core belief is if I lose this relationship, it's because of me, not because of compatibility, not because of life, not because of just the general flow of ups and downs. It's me. It's on me to maintain this relationship. And so they will give and give and give, and they'll give everything they have to that relationship because they feel like if the relationship ends, it's my fault. So it's all on my shoulders. It's about it's about me. So they will give and give and give, and then the other person will give appropriately back, like the correct amount. And so they will then see that as, well, I give way more than that other person. So I must love them more than they love me. And then that starts, well, why don't they love me as much? Well, it must be something I'm doing. And so they then will then give more and more and more. And again, they live in this constant state of whether or not they're doing enough. And it's a really uh, roller coaster way to live and connect with people.
How can anxious attachment affect friendships, dating relationships, marriages, or really even workplace relationships?
Well, so anytime that a person feels as though it is entirely, again, on them to keep this connection going, and they're hyper vigilant for any change whatsoever. Our brains are constantly, everybody's brains constantly scanning for threats. And so a threat to someone with anxious attachment is that this relationship that they care about, they value, that they love so much is going to one day be gone, or it could be gone at any minute. And so it could impact relationships because they may almost obsessively ask for reassurance, obsessively be checking in, doing like emotional monitoring. Like they'll really be like, "Are you sad? You seem like something's up. Is something off? You seem distant. You seem this. You seem like they'll pepper those questions out." And the thing is there may be nothing wrong, right? There may be nothing wrong with that other person. That other person just isn't responding in the exact way that they want. And by asking a million questions, they then will create something. So now that person is like, who was otherwise fine, is now slightly annoyed at the fact that they're answering all these questions, but they're kind of not being believed, but kind of being believed. And the other person is like, I don't know what to say to get out of this spiral or out of this loop that we're in. And so which then further makes the anxious attached person think, see, I knew it. Something was wrong. I'm right. I'm correct in that. And it loops. So that happens a lot in relationships. The other thing is because the person is overly, they believe that, again, it's on their effort. So in workplaces, someone may take on way more work that they should because if I don't take on the extra work or don't do all the extra stuff that they're asking me to do, then they'll leave me. If I don't do all the things that I'm being asked to do by that other person, they'll leave me. Because again, if you come and ask me to do something and I don't want to do it, or it's not in my job description, or my plate is too full, and I go, no, I can't do that. The natural response for any of us is to be disappointed or bummed out, to be like, well, that right there, if an anxious attached person is in a relationship with me and they see me go, they're going to freak out. They're going to be like, "Oh no, here it is. Here's the beginning of the end." They don't like me anymore because I now haven't done what they want me to do. And so then they'll agree to do something that they otherwise would never have agreed to do because they're just trying to save the relationship in their head that was never at risk anyway. The relationship was never at risk. That other person was just momentarily bummed out and they would have gotten over it in 2 seconds and gone and asked someone else. Like if they would have just waited it out. But an anxious attached person is just constantly focused on what can I do to keep this relationship going. So, and the other person in the relationship has no idea that that's what's going on in their head. And so the other person is like, what is happening here? Like they don't realize they're in a roller coaster ride.
Yeah, those are some great thoughts. What can parents and caregivers do to help children develop secure attachment and really emotional resilience?
You so okay, so the reason why anxious attachment develops is because somewhere along the line someone showed, it doesn't mean they're a bad parent, it doesn't mean they were bad caretakers, it doesn't mean that. It just means this wasn't something on the person's radar. And so if a person develops anxious attachment, that means their care, their emotional connection was inconsistent. So it was up and down, up and down. And again, that's life. We know that. However, the way that that parent could have helped their child was to, even on low days, even on bad days, touch base, so to speak. Still make sure that they showed their kids love because we have to be aware of that, right? Like if I'm in a bad mood or I've had a bad day and I'm about to go eat dinner with my friends, there is a high probability that I'm not going to be as talkative. I'm not necessarily going to laugh as much. And so I could just sit at the table and be like, I had a bad day and just let it be that and let them just figure it out. Or I could be like, I could communicate. I'm not going to be as talkative. It's not that I'm not listening. I'm still here. I'm still present, guys. Like I still want to be here. So you're still making sure that that connection is made, even though you're not necessarily high. And so parents can do the same thing with kids. Partners can do the same thing. We can do the same thing at work. Anytime that we're low, you just if you know that that person you're in a relationship with is anxious, you just touch base with them. Let them know where you are. Let them know everything's fine. And ultimately, you want them to move towards a place to where they realize they need that less and less. That should be the goal for the person with anxious attachment is that they need that less and less, and they start to learn that relationships uh, are more about us choosing each other more so than just random events happening, and then it's just no longer, relationships are here one day and gone the next. Like that's not. It can happen, but it's just not the norm.
Yeah, some really good follow-up thoughts there. So to kind of to sum this up, For adults who recognize these patterns in themselves, what practical steps can they take to begin healing or building a healthier relationship?
One of the things is to understand that now that you're an adult, you understand that life does have it ebbs and flows, and there is good days and bad days. You know that now as an adult. You didn't as a child. As a child, you didn't know that. As a child, you thought it was your fault. It was your fault that that person was close or far away. But now as an adult, we know that there are good days and bad days, and that people's personalities, like some days they're on and some days they're off. And to remind yourself of that, to remind yourself that when anxious attachment is going off in your mind, that's you as a kid. That's you as a kid going, it's because something we did. It's because, and now you're an adult and you can speak back to that little child voice in your head and be like, no, that's the way we felt when we were a kid. But now we're an adult and we know better. We know that some days they're just off, or just go to the person and ask them. Just go ask them. Like we can now, like as a kid, you didn't know what to do in that situation. But as an adult, you can go talk to the other person. You can remind yourself that life is an up and down situation, and you can also surround yourself with more in life than just that relationship. You don't want to make that relationship your all or everything. You want to have other things in place: family, friends, church, communities, things that you have, so that if that relationship is on the rocks or something bad's happened, you're not a complete disaster. You're not just completely falling apart and out of it. So you want to have those other things in place. Ultimately, those are a couple of good steps.
Well, thank you both for your time. To wrap this up, children often become what they repeatedly experience. In fear, inconsistency, and uncertainty shapes relationships early in life, and those lessons can follow us into adulthood. But just as unhealthy patterns can be learned, these sessions help us realize that healthier patterns can also be learned. Understanding is always the first step. Thank you for joining us. We hope to see you next month.